The Midnight Rescue. The darkness at 30,000 feet beneath the Pacific Ocean was absolute. Sarah Chen had been piloting deep-sea rescue vessels for 15 years, but the endless black of the Hadal Zone never ceased to amaze her. The powerful lights of her deep search response vehicle cut through the perpetual night, illuminating particles floating in the pristine waters of the Mariana Trench. "Control, this is DSRV Nautilus." Sarah spoke into her comm system, her voice steady despite the crushing pressure surrounding her vessel. Completing final sweep of Grid Section 7. No signs of the seismic disturbance source. Request permission to surface. The response came through with a slight crackle. Copy that. Nautilus. Begin ascent proto. The transmission cut off abruptly as her vessel's sensors screamed to life. Sarah's hands flew across the control panel as readings overwhelmed her instruments. Temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic disturbances, and pressure variations all spiked simultaneously. Through her viewport, she witnessed something impossible, a soft, purple glow emanating from deeper in the trench. "Control, are you seeing this?" Static was her only answer. Whatever was causing the phenomenon was also interfering with communications. Years of experience told her to surface immediately. Protocol demanded she retreat and report. But something about that ethereal purple light triggered her rescue instincts, the same ones that had helped her save countless lives throughout her career. The glow pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. As Sarah maneuvered closer, her sonar picked up a structural mass that hadn't been there during her previous sweep. The object was massive, at least 300 feet long, with an organic-looking design that defied traditional naval architecture. It was also slowly crumpling under the immense pressure of the deep. "What the hell are you?" Sarah whispered, bringing her vessel alongside the structure. Her lights revealed smooth, metallic surfaces covered in swirling patterns that seemed to shift and move in her beam. This was no submarine or sunken ship. Nothing human-made could survive at these depths without massive reinforcement. A movement caught her eye. Something behind one of the structure's transparent sections. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she maneuvered for a better view. There, pressed against what looked like a viewing portal, was a face. Not human, but undeniably alive and conscious. The being's features were delicate, almost luminescent, with large, dark eyes that reflected her vessel's lights. More importantly, it was making deliberate gestures, a universal sign of distress. Sarah's mind raced through her options. The structure was failing. She could see stress fractures spreading across its surface. Whatever this creature was, it would die without immediate intervention. The Nautilus wasn't designed for alien rescue operations. Hell, no one was trained for this scenario. But her vessel did have an emergency docking collar designed to mate with damaged submarines. "Control, if you can hear this, I'm initiating rescue operations," Sarah announced to the dead comm system. She knew she was potentially risking an international incident, her career, and possibly her life. But she had sworn an oath to save lives in danger at sea. She hadn't specified human lives. With precise movements, Sarah aligned her vessel with what appeared to be an airlock mechanism. The alien structure's design was bizarre, but she could make out the basic principles. As she initiated the docking sequence, she silently prayed that physics worked the same way for alien tech as it did for human equipment. The docking collar made contact with a metallic clang that reverberated through her hull. Warning lights flashed as pressure differentials fought against each other, but the seal held. Sarah grabbed her emergency rescue kit and breathing apparatus. She had no idea if the atmosphere inside would be breathable, but she couldn't wait for backup. As she cycled through her airlock, Sarah's heart pounded against her ribs. First contact was about to happen 30,000 feet under the Pacific, in the middle of a rescue operation. She just hoped she wouldn't start an interstellar incident in the process. The inner door of her airlock opened to reveal a corridor bathed in that same purple glow. The air was breathable, according to her sensors, but heavy with humidity. Water sloshed around her boots. The hull breach was getting worse. She moved quickly toward where she had seen the alien, following the curved passage as it sloped downward. She found the being struggling with what looked like a control panel, long fingers dancing across symbols that flickered and faded. It turned as Sarah approached, revealing more of its otherworldly beauty. The alien was humanoid but clearly adapted for an aquatic environment, with gill-like structures along its neck and webbed fingers. Its skin had a pearlescent quality that seemed to shimmer in the purple light. The creature spoke, a series of musical tones that Sarah couldn't understand, but its body language was clear enough. It gestured urgently toward another section of the vessel, then pointed to its chest and held up 4 fingers. 4 more of its kind were trapped somewhere aboard. A deep groan of stressed metal echoed through the corridor. They were running out of time. Sarah made a quick decision and reached out her hand, palm up, a universal gesture of offering help. The alien hesitated for just a moment before placing its webbed hand in hers. As their fingers touched, Sarah felt a tingling sensation race up her arm, and the purple light around them pulsed brighter. She had no idea what it meant, but right now, her priority was clear: get everyone out alive. The rest, first contact protocols, diplomatic implications, classified information concerns, all of that could wait. She had lives to save, and the deep was not known for its patience. Strange waters. Time behaved differently in the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench. Sarah Chen knew they had minutes, perhaps seconds, before the alien vessel's hull gave way completely, but each step through the flooding corridors felt like an eternity. The alien, she had started thinking of it as blue due to the subtle cerulean tint of its skin, led her deeper into the failing structure. The tingling sensation from their initial contact hadn't faded. Instead, it had settled into a strange awareness at the edge of Sarah's consciousness, like a distant radio signal she couldn't quite tune in. Blue moved with urgent grace through the water that now reached their knees, occasionally emitting those musical tones that seemed to ripple through the purple-lit air. They reached what appeared to be a sealed bulkhead. Blue pressed its webbed hands against the surface, and symbols flickered to life beneath its touch. The door remained stubbornly shut. Through the small viewport, Sarah could see movement, more of Blue's kind, trapped in a rapidly flooding compartment. "Stand back," Sarah commanded, more with gestures than words. She pulled out her rescue kit's emergency cutting torch. It was designed for earth metals, but it was the only option they had. Blue seemed to understand, moving aside as Sarah activated the plasma beam. The alien metal resisted at first, then began to yield. Sarah carved a precise circle around the door's locking mechanism, her hand steady despite the urgency of their situation. A loud crack echoed through the corridor as the mechanism failed, and the door groaned open. Water rushed out, along with 3 more aliens. They were similar to Blue in appearance, but each had subtle variations in their pearlescent skin tones and the patterns of their gill structures. The 4th survivor was unconscious, carried by 2 others. Their musical communications took on a frantic pitch. Sarah's wrist computer chimed a warning. The Nautilus was detecting increasing structural stress in the alien vessel. They needed to move now. She gestured toward the way they had come, but Blue caught her arm. More of those musical tones, but this time, something changed. The tingling sensation flared, and suddenly Sarah could understand fragments of meaning within the sounds. Core, must contain, cannot leave. Sarah blinked in surprise. Before she could process this development, Blue led the group not toward the exit, but deeper into the vessel. Every instinct Sarah had developed over years of rescue work screamed against this decision, but the urgency in Blue's partial communication was clear. They reached what had to be the heart of the ship. The purple glow was brightest here, emanating from a crystalline structure that pulsed with energy. Blue rushed to a control panel, its fingers dancing across the symbols as the other aliens laid their unconscious companion down. More fragments of understanding filtered through to Sarah. Research vessel, diplomatic mission, cannot fall. The crystals pulsing became erratic. Sarah's wrist computer screamed warnings about energy spikes and radiation levels. Whatever this core was, it was going critical. Blue's movements became more desperate as it worked at the controls. Sarah made a decision. She pulled out her rescue kit's portable power cell, designed to jumpstart failed submarine systems in emergencies. Moving to Blue's side, she held up the device. The alien's large eyes widened in understanding. Together, they worked to interface the human technology with the alien systems. Sarah didn't understand the principles behind what they were doing, but she could read energy flows, could see how the power needed to be redirected. Blue's knowledge combined with her practical experience, creating solutions neither could have achieved alone. The crystal's pulsing stabilized, then dimmed to a soft glow. Blue's musical tones carried clear relief, but they didn't have time to celebrate. The hull groaned ominously around them. "Time to go," Sarah said, pointing urgently toward the exit. This time, Blue nodded, an unexpectedly human gesture, and helped gather its companions. The unconscious alien was carried between two others as they made their way back through the flooding corridors. They'd reached the Nautilus's docking collar just as a massive shudder ran through the alien vessel. Sarah cycled them through the airlock in pairs, acutely aware that her rescue vessel wasn't designed to hold this many passengers. The last pair, carrying their unconscious companion, had barely cleared the collar when the alien ship's hull finally gave way. Sarah sealed the Nautilus's airlock and rushed to the controls. The docking collar retracted with a screech of protesting metal, and she fired the emergency thrusters, putting distance between them and the imploding vessel. Through her viewport, she watched as the alien ship crumpled in on itself, the purple glow fading into the darkness of the deep. In the passenger compartment behind her, the musical tones of her rescued aliens took on a mournful quality. Sarah knew she should be terrified. She had 5 alien beings aboard her vessel, had witnessed the destruction of advanced technology, and had no idea what awaited them at the surface. Instead, she felt a strange sense of calm. The tingling sensation remained, stronger now. When Blue approached her pilot's station, she wasn't entirely surprised to find she could understand more of its communication. "I am Keelara," the alien said, the musical tones somehow resolving into words in Sarah's mind. "You have saved more than just our lives, human. You have preserved hope for both our peoples." Sarah had 1,000 questions, but they would have to wait. Right now, she had to focus on getting them safely to the surface and figuring out how to explain all of this to Control. As she began their ascent, she couldn't help but smile. She had sworn to save lives in danger at sea, and today she had kept that promise in a way no one could have imagined. Against the tide, the surface of the Pacific Ocean churned under storm-darkened skies as the Nautilus bridged like a mechanical whale. Sarah's arms ached from fighting the controls during their ascent, compensating for the extra weight and unusual energy signatures that her alien passengers generated. Her communication system crackled to life almost immediately. "Nautilus, this is Control. We've been dark for 6 hours. Report status immediately." The voice was tight with concern and something else, suspicion. Sarah glanced back at Keelara and the other aliens, who had arranged themselves around their still unconscious companion. The telepathic link that had formed between them during the rescue had strengthened during their ascent. She could now understand their musical language with surprising clarity, though the connection seemed to flow primarily between her and Keelara. "Control, this is Chen. Be advised, I have recovered." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Multiple survivors from an unidentified vessel. Request immediate medical support and secure containment protocols." The silence that followed lasted too long. When Control responded, it was a different voice, deeper, authoritative. "Nautilus, maintain your position. A recovery team is en route. Do not, repeat, do not attempt to dock with the primary vessel." Keelara moved forward, placing one webbed hand on Sarah's shoulder. "They already know about us." The alien's thoughts filtered into her mind. "The attack on our vessel was not random." Sarah's throat tightened. "What do you mean, attack? I thought you were a research vessel." "We were. But our presence here was not unexpected. Certain factions on your world have been aware of us for some time. Kilara's large eyes reflected the stormlight from the surface. The energy core you helped stabilize contains data crucial to preventing a conflict between our peoples. A distant thrumming caught Sarah's attention. Through the rain-streaked viewport, she could make out approaching helicopters. Military, not rescue service. The insignia wasn't familiar. Your people's oceans are changing, Kilara continued urgently. The deep currents that have protected our civilization for millennia are shifting. Some among us believe conquest is the only solution. Others, like myself, seek cooperation. The research we conducted here could prove that coexistence is possible. The helicopters were getting closer. Sarah's rescue training warred with her instincts. Control, be advised that I'm detecting unauthorized aircraft approaching my position. Static was her only reply. Sarah Chen, Kilara's musical voice carried an edge of desperation. The one we call the current keeper remains unconscious. If we cannot get her to proper medical facilities, the knowledge she carries may be lost forever. Your world's oceans will continue to warm, our territories will collide, and war will become inevitable. The helicopters were close enough now that Sarah could see armed figures preparing to fast rope down to her vessel. Her mind raced through options. The Nautilus was designed for deep-sea rescue, not evasion. But she knew these waters better than anyone. "How good are your people at swimming?" she asked Kilara. The alien's skin rippled with what Sarah now recognized as amusement. "We evolved in waters far deeper than these, but the current keeper cannot be moved without proper care." Sarah's hands flew across her control panel, initiating emergency protocols she had never expected to use. "Control, this is Nautilus declaring a Class 1 emergency. Hull breach detected. Emergency dive protocol engage." She slammed the vessel into a steep dive just as the first helicopter reached them. The sudden descent would buy them time. Military helicopters weren't equipped for prolonged deep-water operations. "Kilara, I need you to tell me exactly what kind of medical support your friend needs. I have contacts at a private marine research facility off the coast of Guam. People I trust." Sarah's mind was already plotting courses, calculating fuel reserves. The alien scientist moved gracefully despite the vessel's sharp angle of descent. "The current keeper's consciousness is distributed. The attack disrupted her connection to our collective knowledge. We can stabilize her, but we need access to specific mineral compounds found only in deep ocean vents." Warning lights flashed across Sarah's console as depth charges detonated behind them. The Nautilus shuddered but held together. "Your attackers are persistent," she observed grimly. "They fear what we offer," Kilara replied. "Knowledge freely shared threatens those who profit from scarcity." The deep ocean welcomed them back into its darkness as Sarah took them down past the thermocline. Her passive sensors detected multiple vessels converging on their position, but in these waters, she had the advantage. The Nautilus might not be fast, but she knew how to use the ocean's layers to mask their signature. "The research facility has access to the Mariana volcanic arc," she told Kilara. "If we can get there, would your people be able to synthesize what you need?" "Yes, but we would require time. And protection." Sarah smiled grimly. "Time I can give you. As for protection." She entered a series of coordinates into her navigation system. "Let's just say I'm not the only one who believes some secrets are worth keeping." The alien scientist studied her with those large, knowing eyes. "You risk much for beings you have just met." "I risk much for the chance to prevent a war," Sarah corrected. "And because it's the right thing to do." As the Nautilus descended into the depths that had become Sarah's second home, she felt the weight of what she was undertaking. She had no proof that Kilara was telling the truth about any of it. The coming conflict, the importance of their research, the existence of human conspirators. But the attack on her vessel was real enough, and her instincts had never led her wrong before. They had a long journey ahead, hunted by forces they didn't fully understand, racing to save a being whose very consciousness might hold the key to peace between their species. Sarah checked their heading one more time and settled in for the chase. Behind her, the aliens began to sing, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the very waters around them. Through their connection, Sarah caught fragments of meaning, hope, determination, and something else that took her a moment to recognize: trust. Despite everything, these beings trusted her to guide them to safety. She intended to prove worthy of that trust, no matter what lay ahead in the darkness of the deep depths of trust. The Mariana Marine Research Station rose from the Pacific like a fortress of steel and glass, its support pylons disappearing into the dark waters below. Sarah guided the Nautilus through the underwater docking procedure, her movements precise despite her exhaustion. The past 18 hours had pushed both her and her vessel to their limits, evading pursuit through the ocean's hidden currents. Dr. Martinez, this is Sarah Chen requesting Emergency Protocol 7. She transmitted on a heavily encrypted channel. I have sensitive cargo requiring immediate quarantine and specialized mineral synthesis. There was a pause before the response came. Acknowledged Chen. But you should know, we've received inquiries about your position from some very insistent people. Howard, those people cannot be trusted. Sarah glanced at Kilara, who stood silently beside her pilot's chair. Through their mental link, she could sense the alien scientist's growing concern. What I'm bringing in could change everything we know about marine adaptation and deep-sea ecosystems. Another pause. Dock at Beta 3. I'll meet you there personally. The docking bay doors opened with agonizing slowness. As they entered the pressurized chamber, Sarah noticed security personnel taking positions along the observation deck, some openly armed. Howard Martinez might be willing to help, but he wasn't taking any chances. Your friend speaks truth within truth, Kilara observed, the musical quality of her voice carrying clearly in Sarah's mind. But there is fear there as well. Howard's a good man, Sarah replied as she completed the docking sequence. He's dedicated his life to understanding the oceans. If anyone will help us, it's him. The other aliens had arranged themselves protectively around the current keeper, whose condition had deteriorated during their journey. The being's pearlescent skin had dulled, and the rhythmic pulsing of its gill structures had become erratic. As the docking bay drained, Sarah found herself facing a crucial moment. Everything would depend on these first few minutes: how she presented the situation, how her aliens conducted themselves, and whether Howard's scientific curiosity would outweigh his caution. The airlock cycled, and Howard Martinez stepped through, flanked by 2 security officers. He was exactly as Sarah remembered: tall, gray-haired, with eyes that missed nothing behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Those eyes widened considerably as he took in the scene before him. Sarah, he said carefully, when you said sensitive cargo. I know, Howard. She stepped forward, positioning herself between her old mentor and her alien charges. But right now, I need you to trust that I wouldn't have brought them here without a damn good reason. Kilara moved to stand beside her, and Sarah felt the alien's consciousness brush against her own, seeking permission. She nodded slightly. The mental connection expanded, and suddenly Howard gasped as Kilara's thoughts touched his mind. Sarah watched as understanding bloomed across his face, the same wonder she had felt when she first truly comprehended what they were dealing with. Remarkable, he whispered. The hypothetical models, the deep current anomalies we've been tracking. It all makes sense now. Dr. Martinez, Kilara's musical voice carried clearly in all their minds now. We require access to your thermal vent sampling equipment and mineral synthesis facilities. One of our own is dying, and with her, knowledge vital to both our peoples. Howard's scientific detachment wavered as he looked at the unconscious current keeper. The security alerts, the military activity in the region, are all connected, Sarah finished. There are people who don't want this contact to happen, Howard. People who'd rather see conflict between our species than cooperation. For a long moment, Howard stood silent, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to the security officers. Initiate Protocol Omega. Full facility lockdown. No communications in or out without my direct authorization. The officers hesitated only briefly before moving to comply. Howard turned back to Sarah and her aliens, his expression set with determination. "The synthesis lab is this way," he said. "But while we work, I want to know everything. And I mean everything." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Kilara and her companions worked with Howard's team to synthesize the complex mineral compounds they needed, while Sarah explained their harrowing rescue and escape. Through their strengthened mental link, the aliens shared images and information about their civilization, vast cities in the ocean's deepest trenches, technology that worked in harmony with marine ecosystems, and the growing crisis that had brought them to Earth's waters. "The current keeper," Kilara explained as they watched the synthesis process, "is more than just a title. She is a living repository of our collective knowledge about ocean currents and their manipulation. The changes in Earth's oceans are mirror images of what happened in our home waters generations ago. Her knowledge could help both our peoples navigate the transitions to come." Howard's facilities were impressive, but they weren't designed for this kind of work. Twice, they had to modify equipment on the fly, combining human ingenuity with alien insight. Sarah found herself acting as a bridge between the two groups, her unique mental connection with Kilara allowing her to translate complex concepts in both directions. But they weren't working fast enough. The current keeper's condition continued to decline, and Sarah could sense Kilara's growing distress through their link. "There's something you're not telling us," Sarah finally said during a brief pause in their work. "Something about why those people attack your ship, why they're so desperate to stop this contact." Kilara's large eyes met hers, and Sarah felt a wave of emotion through their connection. Sorrow, fear, and a grim determination. "The current keeper doesn't just know how to navigate changing waters," the alien scientist admitted. "She knows how to influence them. The technology your people seek, it could be weaponized, used to control the very currents that regulate your planet's climate." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. "And the people who attacked you already have fragments of our technology. But without the complete understanding the current keeper possesses, their attempts to use it could devastate both our worlds." A distant alarm began to sound. Howard rushed to a nearby console, his face grim. Multiple surface vessels approaching. Military signatures. They're demanding immediate access for environmental inspection. Sarah looked at the synthesis equipment, its process only halfway complete. Then at the current keeper, whose life was slipping away with each passing moment. They were out of time, and their choices were running out. But Sarah Chen had never been one to accept no-win scenarios. As she looked between her alien friends and her human mentor, a desperate plan began to form in her mind. "Howard," she said, "how close are we to the thermal vent field?" Her old mentor's eyes narrowed as he caught her meaning. "Directly above it." "But Sarah, what you're thinking could get us all killed," she finished. "But right now, it might be our only chance." Rising together, the research station's hull groaned under the pressure of the approaching storm. Sarah Chen stood at the facility's main control panel, her fingers hovering over commands that could either save them all or doom them to the crushing depths. Above, military vessels were positioning themselves around the station. Below, the thermal vent field churned with primordial energy. "The synthesis must continue for at least another 15 minutes, Kilara reported, her musical tones tight with concern. "But the current keeper may not have that long." Howard Martinez worked furiously at another console, trying to maintain the station's defensive protocols against increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. "They're good," he muttered. "Too good. These aren't regular military hackers." Sarah felt the weight of multiple lives, human and alien, resting on her next decision. Through her mental link with Kilara, she could sense the other aliens' mounting anxiety, their desperate hope that the current keeper's knowledge could be preserved. "Howard," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "initiate vent field dispersal pattern Delta. Full spread." Her mentor's hands froze over his keyboard. "Sarah, That would create a massive underwater thermal bloom. The station's sensors would be completely blind. Exactly. She turned to Kilara. Your people evolved in waters like these, didn't you? Can you navigate through superheated currents? The alien scientist's skin rippled with understanding. Yes, but your vessel won't be going with you. Sarah's fingers flew across the control panel, programming a series of commands. The Nautilus will be a decoy, drawing their attention while you take the current keeper through the vent field. The thermal bloom will mask your biological signatures. And what about you? Howard demanded. The moment they realize the aliens aren't on the Nautilus. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. By then, we'll have given them something else to worry about. The station shuddered as the first warning shots were fired from above, not at them, but into the water nearby. A clear message: surrender or be boarded. Kilara, Sarah turned to her alien friend. I need you to trust me one more time. Can your people handle near-boiling temperatures? For a short time, yes. But the current keeper's condition will get worse before it gets better. Sarah initiated the first phase of her plan. Deep beneath them, the thermal vent dispersal system began redirecting superheated water in a carefully controlled pattern. Howard, begin evacuation procedures. Get non-essential personnel to the surface pods. Her old mentor nodded grimly and began issuing orders. Around them, the station's crew moved with practiced efficiency, though their faces showed confusion and fear. Through her link with Kilara, Sarah shared her complete plan, not in words, but in images and concepts. The alien's large eyes widened. The risk is worth taking, Sarah finished. Your people have technology that could either save or destroy our oceans. The current keeper holds the knowledge to use it wisely. Right now, I'm less worried about risk and more worried about that knowledge falling into the wrong hands. A violent explosion rocked the station. Howard's console erupted in morning lights. They breached the outer security perimeter. Sarah's hands danced across her control panel, initiating the next phase. The thermal vents below them roared to full power, sending massive plumes of superheated water into carefully positioned columns. The station's external sensors went dark, blinded by the temperature differentials. Now, she commanded. Kilara and her companions moved with fluid grace, lifting the current keeper. Sarah led them not to the Nautilus, but to a secondary maintenance airlock near the station's base. As Howard had said, they were directly above the vent field. The synthesis compounds, Kilara said urgently, already programmed for automated completion and delivery to these coordinates. Sarah handed her a waterproof data core. Everything you need will be waiting for you, but you have to go now. The alien scientist hesitated, then pressed her webbed hand against Sarah's forehead. The mental link between them surged, and Sarah gasped as knowledge flooded into her mind. Coordinates, frequencies, methods of contact. You've proven humanity's potential today. Kilara's thoughts resonated clearly. When the time comes, we will remember. The airlock cycled. Sarah watched through its small viewport as her alien friends disappeared into the superheated waters, their bodies adapting seamlessly to the extreme conditions. The current keeper's form was barely visible between them as they vanished into the thermal bloom. Another explosion rocked the station. Sarah rushed back to the main control room, where Howard was directing the last of the evacuation. They're through the inner perimeter, he reported. 2 minutes, maybe less. Sarah took her position at the main console. Get to the surface, Howard. Tell them whatever you need to. Just stay alive to keep fighting the good fight. Her mentor gripped her shoulder briefly. The thermal blooms won't hide them forever. They don't need forever, Sarah replied. They just need enough time to save their friend. And maybe all of us in the process. As Howard reluctantly headed for the last evacuation pod, Sarah initiated the final phase of her plan. The station's thermal vent control systems were never designed for what she was about to attempt, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The first armed teams breached the control room just as Sarah finished her calculations. She raised her hand slowly, turning to face them. "Gentlemen," she said calmly, "I'd suggest hanging onto something." She slammed her elbow down on the emergency override, and the ocean around them erupted. The thermal vents released their full power in a precisely calculated pattern, creating a massive underwater vortex. The station groaned as powerful currents battered its supports. The armed men stumbled, trying to maintain their balance as the structure swayed. Their weapons wavered. "That was just a taste," Sarah announced. "The station's vent control systems are now locked in a recursive loop. Try to override them, and the next surge will tear the support pylons straight out of the seabed." It wasn't strictly true, but they didn't know that. "You're bluffing," one of the men growled. "You'll kill everyone topside." "Check your sensors," Sarah replied. "The evacuation's complete. It's just us down here now. So we can either have a civilized conversation about why you're so interested in my alien friends, or—" She let the threat hang in the water-heavy air. The team leader pressed his hand to his earpiece, listening to orders Sarah couldn't hear. Finally, he lowered his weapon slightly. "Start talking," he commanded. Sarah smiled. By now, Kilara and the others would be deep in the vent field, their biological signatures masked by the thermal blooms. The current keeper would receive the synthesized compound she needed, and their knowledge would be preserved. More importantly, somewhere in the depths of Earth's oceans, two civilizations had taken their first steps toward genuine cooperation. "Actually," she said, settling into her chair, "I think you should start. Tell me everything you know about climate manipulation technology, and why you're so afraid of humans and aliens working together to save our oceans instead of fighting over them." The station creaked around them, currents still surging through the vent field below. But Sarah Chen was exactly where she needed to be, creating a bridge between worlds, one conversation at a time. In the depths below, Kilara's final thoughts reached her through their fading connection. "Until we meet again, Sarah Chen. The currents have changed, but now they change together." Sarah smiled. Sometimes the greatest adventures didn't end with a bang, but with the quiet realization that the world would never be quite the same again. She had sworn an oath to save lives at sea, and today she might have helped save two entire civilizations. Not bad for a deep-sea rescue diver who had simply refused to ignore a cry for help in the darkness of the deep.